Carl Jung, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will define our lives and we'll call it fate. So if something happens and then I have a reaction to it, my first thing is not to say anything, not to react to it. It's to say, what the hell just happened? And then I'm just sitting in the wonder of that. Like, where did that come from? And that single question can lead to the most wonderful discoveries. You know, when people say life is boring, I say, wow, it's because you've been looking outside of yourself for the answer or for the joy or the fun. I'm like, take a little bit of time inside and like hear your brain speaking to yourself and think, where did that thought come from?
Hello and welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Linda Ulrich, and I'm also the founder of the mothership website of this podcast. It's called the Goodness Exchange. There is a world of innovators out there that we're not hearing about in the negative news and the noise in social media. And this podcast and the Goodness Exchange was created 13 years ago to solve that problem. Our guest today is Andy Chaleff. Andy has a gift for opening our eyes with refreshing new ways to make the conflict in our relationships more productive. Andy's written a book called The Connection Playbook, and now he's got a new book called Dying to Live. Both are just full of ways to be more contemplative, more thoughtful, pause, and have a better response to the conflicts that are inevitable in everyday life. He's also got a really fun game called Cool It. And I heard about this game long before it actually was produced because I think I was more interested than most. I've been married to my husband since 1981. So I don't know, do the math, a long time. And we were childhood sweethearts. And we do have the same fights over and over again. And we have for 40 years. And we do other crazy things in our conflicts. And I tell you, Andy's insights years ago in his book gave us a fresh start on lots and lots of that kind of chronic discord that happens in all kinds of relationships. So that's another thing that I just add. The insights you're going to get today from this interview with Andy, well, it doesn't just apply to couples because I have a complex relationship with my brother. I've used Andy's insights so many times with my brother. I was a business person, so I had 12 relationships with employees that were complex and used his insights there. So you're in for a treat. If you've ever wished there was a way to transform the recurring arguments into something that, you know, brings you closer instead of pushing you apart, because that's what all this does. It just creates sometimes a chasm that we can't bridge later. Well, you're in for a treat. Welcome, Andy Chaleff.
Thank you. I feel so much bigger after having heard you say all this. You know?
Well, you're a favorite around here. And maybe we need to hear those kind of things from others more often.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to tell our significant others. I certainly have trouble accepting that kind of love and appreciation. That's not something that comes easy for me. Well, humility is a wonderful trait. And I think that this old world can stand a little bit of those of us who are really, really trying to be thoughtful about what we're adding to the world. I think we have to stand up a little taller and put this stuff out there with more confidence so that maybe it's the stuff that catches on, you know?
Yeah. It's funny because there's the more you want to impact the world with love, there's a kind of a paradox in there for me a bit. Like it's I want to meet you where you are. I don't want to convince you there's something you need from me. Right? Like I'd rather you see that it's all within you. It's all there. It's not easy to resource. I get that, but like just sitting with your own meditative understanding of yourself will bring you quite far, right? And then maybe there'll be little things you can add here or there with tools or tips and tricks. But the challenge, at least in my own going through the world and promoting, is always I'd want to say, don't read my books. You know, stay with your own understanding of the world. Actually, if anything, enrich your own understanding better by taking a silent retreat and basically just listen to your thoughts for a week and see what you learn about yourself and how that informs how you're interacting with the world. Because
I think it's a both and, Andy.
yeah, clearly.
I mean, most of us, here's what I've been kind of going on lately, thinking about a lot. I've interviewed now twice a gentleman who's the leading detective in the United States for stopping cybercrime against children. And he stopped over 42 school bombings this year.
Wow.
52 in 2024. He's an incredible guy, Detective Rich Wistocki. I'll put a link to those episodes. And what he taught me, one of the things he taught me, is that we can't get out of our own way when we're just in our head. That's what happens when people do terrible things. They're just in their head. But it also happens to the teacher that's trying to figure out a new way to appeal to this crazy kid in the fourth row, right?
Yeah.
She's in her own head, she's just stuck with her own tools.
Yeah.
So I began to think, what if by the time we're adults and we're really affecting others, we've all got a toolbox of coping skills. And that toolbox is completely filled with random tools that we might have gotten from a grandparent or a neighbor or a minister in our life or whoever, a teacher. But the way problems come towards us, that's completely random too. So whether we got a tool to fit that problem or not, maybe we look like a genius to our family because we get through cancer or something. Maybe we look like a genius, but I think it's more that we just happen to have that tool in the toolbox.
Yeah. Or it's our predisposition, right? It could be we were born with a certain predisposition that makes it more capable of dealing with certain situations, right?
But in other situations, we might be clueless and toolless.
Yeah.
So I'm going to push back on your assertion. I think that what you're giving us, Andy, is tools for our toolbox.
Yeah, when I write these, I've come around to calling them spiritual memoirs because there's a category of me being vulnerable in a way that everyone should, on some level, be able to identify themselves in the writing. So, I kind of struggled because I still don't, I'm working on book 5 now, and I still don't feel myself to be a writer. It's the funniest thing because in my mind, it's like all I'm doing is articulating a deep sense of how I experience the world. And I feel like it's kind of a reflection how everyone on some level experiences the world. And so, yes, in answer or getting back to your original point, I have tons of tools that I've pulled from, and everyone would have their own tools and resources. So yeah, I find that the tools are great, and so I don't want to dismiss that. And at the same token, it's to a bigger point, is that when we sometimes give away our capacity to reason for ourselves to another, we lose some agency over our own thinking. And that's something that I see happen all too often, is that someone promises something that we can gain, and then we go chasing that shiny object. And then at the end, there's often this sense of disappointment. Well, it didn't give me what I really thought I wanted or what I expected. And then we chase the next shiny object and the next shiny object.
I get it.
So I'm pointing more at that, I guess, than the idea that, and in each book there is a practice. So I'm giving practices out as well, and things that served me clearly.
I will say that that's what's very cool about the Connection Playbook, is that it's full of practices. And one other thing I want to say about the toolbox, because before we start something really fun that we agreed to do. So I got this toolbox idea, and I think it relates to what you're going to offer us today. So there's an amazing man named AJ Craybill. I'll put a link to his episode in our show notes. He is a guy who is hired by school boards all over the United States to help them get their school on track. And on track, what that means to him is that if a school has a problem with delinquency or fighting or violence or whatever, schools should be asking themselves what tools they aren't giving children. and not, banning textbooks. Like
Yeah.
what school boards are worrying about these days is not giving tools to kids.
Yeah.
And he uses himself an example. He was a foster child in the Kansas City foster kid system for all his growing up. And he says he calls himself Little AJ. I mean, if Little AJ punched the kid at lunch who made fun of him, it's not because Little AJ is a horrible person already at age 8. It's because punching was the tool that he saw most closely matched the situation.
Yeah.
In his toolbox. Like no grown-ups had ever thought to give him any other tools to handle bullying or whatever. And so I began to look at the behaviors of myself first and others. And I began to go, when somebody looks wise, maybe it's because they had the right tool. And if they look unwise, it doesn't mean they're a bad person, or if they totally piss me off.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really about the fight that my husband and I just had this morning.
Yeah.
Right? I wanted him to have the tool in his toolbox, and he didn't have it.
Yeah. It was funny because there was my first mentor would often come with new concepts to me when we were starting out. And he's like, Andy, if you want to change your behavior, find out the guiding principle of another and adopt that for yourself. So he says, if you know the principle they're following, then you take their principle and then you just adopt it for yourself. And what you'll see is that your behavior will align itself with that principle.
That's lovely. And that's why I do the podcast. That's why you're on it twice. That's why, or 3 times. That's why I can't not do this. I've retired from being a dentist, and I still put as much or more into this work with the Goodness Exchange and the podcast, is because of that reason right there. If we can just give people another way of looking at some of their limiting beliefs, right? Or just exactly what you just said. If you learn from the gal in Africa I just interviewed who's training pouched rats to clear whole countries of landmines, she might change what we value, right? About the earth and wildlife and the potential of other species and all that. Like, okay, we grow. Okay, we expand just a little bit. And who knows how that might affect some decision I make. So anyway, let's get to it. Okay, so what we want to do is we're going to take some of the topics that are in the game. And I'm just going to fire off a topic at you.
Yes.
And, catchy, relatable things, and have you just share with us the insights that come to mind that might be helpful for us all.
Sounds very interesting. I like that.
Okay.
I'm going to be on a hot seat.
Okay. All right. The first one that relates to my argument I had with my husband this morning, and probably every single person who's listening to us. How do we stop having the same fight over and over again?
Oh, that's a good one. Oh, Carl Jung, until we make the unconscious conscious, it'll define our lives and we'll call it fate.
Can you do that again really slow?
Let's slow that down. I was going to say, let's slow that one down.
Yeah.
Carl Jung, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will define our lives and we'll call it fate.
So, when we're having that same fight over and over again, is there something unconscious between us that we just haven't worked out, and we're not getting any closer?
Always. Mm-hmm. Not is there. There's always something you're unconscious of. The question we don't know is how relevant is it to this apparent fight that we're having at that moment.
Okay.
So like I look at my relationships, the fighting being part of it, as everything going on in the world is sort of like a meditation for me. So something happens and then I have a reaction to it. My first thing is not to say anything, not to react to it. It's to say, what the hell just happened? Like it's almost like I became an astronaut and all of a sudden it's just like there's a wondrous thing that just transpired inside of this spacesuit, which would be the exterior potentially of whatever I'm looking at, right? And then I'm just sitting in the wonder of that. Like, where did that come from? And that single question can lead to the most wonderful discoveries. Just like, when people say life is boring, I say, wow, it's because you've been looking outside of yourself for the answer or for the joy or the fun. I'm like, take a little bit of time inside and like hear your brain speaking to yourself and think to yourself, where did that thought come from?
Okay. So how to stop having the same fight? I'll just share.
Yeah, please. That's the best. Let's go into real life.
So real life this morning, I had this, we're preparing a year from now. Our daughter's going to get married on our farm here in Vermont. And we got a to-do list a mile long and we're happy. We retired from dentistry. So our day is our own every day. And we have heavy equipment. We have excavators and tractors and we love doing everything, grew up on a farm. So we know how to do a lot. So it's not the work, it's the ideas. Sometimes when we clash, it's never about the work. It's about how to solve the problem that we're looking at with all those giant logs that happen to be placed for 3 years exactly where she wants to be married. Yeah. I have this idea, he has that, then, okay. So the fight this morning was about these logs and what to do with them. And in that fight, I had an idea. And he interrupted me before I could spit it out. We have been having an argument about how he interrupts me before I spit out my whole idea for 40 years, once a week.
By the way, I have the same.
Okay.
Ronnie interrupts me all the time, and I always laugh. Okay. And then she answers the question or she makes assumptions about what I was going to say, and then it has nothing to do with what I was actually going to say. And then I'll laughingly say, so that has absolutely nothing to do with what I was going to say. So are you interested in hearing what I was actually going to say? And then that tends to resolve itself without friction.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's in our relationship because I don't say it to diminish her or to even make a point. It's just the actualness of it. It's the reality is.
All right. So right there is part of the answer is that like so many opportunities we have in life to practice equanimity. Mm-hmm. I'm using our current political situation to practice equanimity. In that moment, when I get interrupted, and I imagine this applies to a lot of the same fight over and over again, I'm going to
interrupt you right now. What you say is not that important right now, Linda. It's not that important.
What? What?
What comes up for you when I do that?
Oh. I want to... Okay.
What comes up for you when I do that? I just did it.
When you do that, I want to say, he's trying to go even more higher philosophically, but that's just because we know each other. Okay. I know. I get what you're doing. So that's the way I take it and I get mad. But what is the answer more in me pausing and controlling my reaction? Because that sounds to me what you're doing.
What I'm saying is, what if you actually didn't care?
Well, sometimes that's what I do. I say, well, I guess you don't want to hear what my idea is.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. You feel you feel the energy in that. Like that's what I'm getting at. Yeah. So I interrupted you, right? Rudely interrupted you in the middle of this thing.
Okay.
For all the viewers, I was very conscious of what I'm doing. Linda and I have a very good relationship, so please, you can hate on me later. But the point was to give you the experience of that moment when you're triggered. And in that moment, you can laugh at yourself or you can feel the tension that pushes you to react in a contorted fashion. And that's it. It's that simple. I mean, and not simple at the same time, obviously. Mm-hmm.
So if the other person isn't getting it, okay, I'm just assuming this is all Chuck's fault. Okay, but let's say, because I always react the exact same way. I'm like, well, okay, if you don't want to know what my idea was, we'll just...
Exactly.
Passive
aggressive.
Miss that opportunity.
Right? Yeah. I'm still pissed at you, but I'm going to resolve it that way. I get it, totally.
Okay. Next time, I'm going to take my own advice because I have a whole TEDx talk on pausing before we respond. like pause and shift up from the lizard brain, because that's where we get sent all the time when we're triggered, is back to the lizard brain. And I'm going to try and be more playful next time, care less, as you're suggesting. I'm going to care less.
You have to not be outcome oriented. You have to realize if there's pain in not being seen, I'm not being seen. And this is my own work would be, and it's okay. I could cry, by the way, when I say it to you, because I have to feel it in my system. I'm not being respected by my partner, and it's okay. Because those are the feelings that are behind it all.
I'm just going to keep going and be authentic. That's exactly what it is. When he does that to me, Andy, I was raised at a time when women could be 5 things: a teacher, a secretary, a stewardess, a nurse. I don't know. Maybe only 4 things. And I'm not kidding.
Yeah, I get it.
And I'm a dentist. And I was one of only 5 women in my dental school class. And they didn't teach the women to take out tooth. I've never taken out a tooth because they refused to teach us.
Wow.
The head of the oral surgery department thought women shouldn't be dentists, and he refused.
Wow.
Okay, so I've spent my whole entire professional life not being seen. When I go places, people say, "Oh, who are you a dental assistant for?" If I'm standing next to my husband at a meeting, also dentist. Okay, he's 6'6", former basketball player, that guy. I have never once not had the person talking to him, giving him all the respect, turn to me and say, "Oh, are you the office manager?"
Yeah.
And I guess you're right. Okay, so thank you. So we worked this through. I hope that I'm not the only person in the world who this applies to, but I think that my reaction to that constant same fight over and over again comes from a place much, much deeper. And you just threw it totally threw the tarp off of it.
Yeah.
It's I've had a life of not being seen. As a woman in a profession where that was mostly a man's world, right? Okay, so that's so interesting. Okay, pick another fight.
I'm kind of crying now because I love you so much, Linda. You know that.
I learned some ways around how to react. I'm not even going to go into it.
Yeah.
When somebody said that, because what's important is what you say next, right?
When you say what? When you say what?
When somebody would say that to me, "Oh, are you his assistant? Or are you the office manager?"
Yeah.
We won't go into that. What I want to do is, because I handled it, not good, but I had a way of, we can just talk about it. I had a way of shaking their hand, introducing myself and saying, no, I'm Dr. Linda Ulrich. So I get their hand. They'd have to shake my hand, and I'd turn the hand over so my hand was on top. And then I would hold it way longer than they were comfortable holding my hand.
It kind of goes back to the talk we had a moment ago, right? With the reaction to your husband, right?
Right.
Like there's a way and that's what we're touching on now.
Right.
That's it. It's like, what is the coping mechanism which actually served us at a certain point of time? I don't even want to diminish it. I don't even want us to say, "Oh, that isn't good." I'd almost like to say, Linda, that's what we needed to do at that moment in time in our development in order to get the respect that wasn't being given to us. So there's nothing in reverse to say, "Hey, let's look back at it and say, hey, that was bad." That would be ludicrous. What we would say is basically where I am right now with my husband in these kind of situations. How would I interact differently where basically I get the respect without having to compromise the connection to myself? Because that's what I don't want to. I never want to compromise the connection to my emotional self. If something is said to me that hurts, I'm going to say it hurts. If something makes me angry, I'm going to say that angers me. So I don't want to be dismissive of the emotion, but I want the emotion to define my reaction.
And I totally agree with you. I have spent a long time public speaking, telling people to change contempt to curiosity.
Yeah.
And once in a while, if I was in a really a really good mindset. I could say to people, oh, that's so interesting that you should say that. No, I'm a dentist too. What in your life experience made you just assume that I was his assistant?
Oh, wow. You really went there. That's beautiful.
And
Oh,
I do it
wow.
in a beautiful way. I'm still holding their hand. Sometimes I'm caressing their hand.
Yeah. You really, but you needed to make that point because you weren't being seen.
That's right. And that's
Yeah.
when I could keep it together. And you know what? I have to say, a good bit of the answer. I probably did that 10 times over
Yeah.
many years, over 15
Yeah,
years.
sure.
Because it worked better now that I really think about it. And I tell you, you know what most of them said? Well, my dad was a dentist and my mom was the office manager.
Oh, wow.
So that's perfectly it's understandable that they would just leap to an assumption, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you made it personal, which is the point, right? That the always when we make it personal to us, we interact in a way which is reactive, right? We're not leaving spaciousness for like a different dialogue to emerge.
Okay, we've talked about my little problem, but I want people to appreciate what you just said is applies to almost any kind of recurring fight, I would assume, right? If we've got this recurring fight, it means we have this unresolved thing. And I think what you just told me was that could apply to almost anything if we're not seeing a bigger picture or what's behind the reason why we have that fight over and over.
But
Give us another
Linda,
example.
what you're saying is nonsense.
Right.
Exactly. So if you ever get triggered by anything that another person says, that's in my own life where I look inward.
Okay. Where you look inward. That's it.
Always. Like, it does not matter. It does not. It would be. I don't even know what I just said to you. But
if you ever get triggered, that's when you look inward.
Yeah, but
Yes.
I meant when I said whatever I said to you just a moment ago, which was supposed to in a way trigger. The idea being that it would be matched with more curiosity than anything else, almost as a predisposition. Like there might be a moment of like, bang, I got a kick, and then in that kick is like, well, what is that there? And then in that wonder, everything that comes from your mouth is so much more in line with staying in connection.
This is so huge. If we're triggered, no matter what, we're not just talking about my problem. Almost anything that we could talk about from here on out.
Yeah.
If we get triggered, we have to look inward. That is the big insight. Like, wow, why did that trigger me?
Exactly. Like with the wonder. Like there's nothing outside of me at all that's going to affect this. Whatever does, and when I say not affect it, everything is affecting it. Let me say how it's affecting it. I'm not going to ever lose touch with. That's the point. I'm being affected by everything all the time, and sometimes there's a spike, and in that spike, I'm like, "Whoa, what's going on there?" So those trees, that we're talking about, that those trees, like your ideas around the trees are useless, Linda. They're just useless. And then
I'm changing contempt to curiosity.
Yeah. And so I almost want, and I see it's hard because there's a degree which you have to see the absurdity of everything afterwards. So you're like, you have to be okay with the idea that, everything I said is useless. Like if you can't allow that to be comfortable inside your system, you'll still defend it. No, I got a great idea. I know where they belong. I know what we should do, and you're not listening to me. You're not respecting me. And then you say, Andy, I've got to turn contempt into curiosity. But you're still coming from contempt because it is still I'm contorting myself, but you'll feel so ungratified at the end of it because you'll be like, ugh, I took all the weight of this jerk who won't even give show me the time and energy. So the only way I know, and I speak for myself, and I don't want to minimize how challenging it can be, but the only thing I know is to actually hold your thoughts very lightly, very lightly.
Nat Geo photographer DeWitt Jones taught me many, many years ago in an interview, never marry an outcome.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No.
Never marry an outcome.
It's a Buddhist principle, right? Is don't work outcome oriented. You work in the process. You do things well, and there will be an outcome. But if you make the outcome the focus, then how you get there can be contaminated and not connected and totally unfulfilling. So if you make the way the actual the focus, then the outcome, whatever it's meant to be, will show up, and you'll just be grateful for it because you weren't living in anticipation of what it had to be or should be, all of those words. Yeah.
And I just have to add, he was a Nat Geo photographer in the stratospheric time of Nat Geo's rise.
Yeah.
And you can imagine what perspective he was using. If he went to photograph a sunrise in the Arctic and get a polar bear, and a polar bear didn't show up, but there was this baby harp seal there, he would literally miss that photograph if he was just married to the outcome of getting a polar bear that day, right? So I'm going to also link people to that episode because he's in his late 80s now and very wise, and he shares a lot in that episode. Okay, can you give us another common couples frictional situation, any that you come across, and apply that same thing to it? We've really focused on this getting interrupted thing, but tell me another one that might work out the same way if we can just pause and go inward.
Yeah, there's a category of many, so it would be nice to talk about the category.
Okay.
And then we can go into specifics.
Okay.
So if you look at an interaction between two people when it starts to go off, again, I always like to go back to yours because then it becomes clear, but we'll start here. There's always an idea of a need that's not being met. And beyond that need, or from that need, there becomes an expectation. And so now we have a need, which is I need to be emotionally seen. My expectation is you're not going to interrupt me. I have a need that I'm going to be respected because I've also had achievement in my own life. And the expectation is when someone greets me, they're not going to be dismissive of me as someone who hasn't also achieved. And so the expectation that's subtle in our lives is the thing that we all of a sudden get to learn the moment it gets triggered. When I get triggered, I'm like, wow, I didn't even know I had an expectation. I have a recent one, which is just wonderful. Every time I come up with a book and then I have to get the book cover, it's one of the most triggering experiences of my life because I have so many expectations. My need underneath it is this book has an impact. My need is that it's seen as something that's done well, because I don't want to put anything in the world that doesn't feel like it was like well thought out and well managed and well done. That's just not in my DNA. So now my expectation is that when I get that cover back, I already know how I'm going to feel, and it's a very, very visceral reaction. If I don't feel that feeling, then I just say it's not it. It's not it. It's not it.
Oh.
That can go on a half a year. I could do it's not it, right? And it's painful. I've cried on each book cover. I've actually cried on each because the pain of seeing something not reflected back in the image the need to have it done that well, not seeing it reflected back. And obviously this is all arbitrary. What is well?
It is.
But it is a need that's so raw and deep in me that the expectation isn't met. So yeah, that would be so. Taking this back to relationships, and if we go to relationships, the need again, as we said, to not to be seen and respected would then, of course, lead to that expectation that isn't something that I would allow in my life. Now, it's going to happen as it always does, and when it does happen, again, if we're not in connection to the need, then we'll be reacting to that need without conscious, going back to Carl Jung. Until we make the unconscious conscious, It'll define our lives, and we'll call it fate.
Can
Yeah.
I imagine that exact scenario that you're talking about
Yeah.
can come out when people are raising, especially teenagers,
Yes.
right? Because we have this, just like a book cover, we have this notion in our mind of
Yeah.
an outcome when we have children. When they're 4, we expect them to be this when they're 10, and this when they're
Yeah.
16. So I imagine that the same principle could apply to how people relate to their teenagers or their young adult family members, right?
Without a doubt. Because again, it's the expectation of what they should be doing or what they should have achieved by this time or what they should do after they graduate. You remember, like, it was funny. My dad disowned me for a decade. We didn't talk for 10 years. And we didn't talk because he had a clear expectation of what I would do after college. So I went and traveled the world, got a backpack, and just, I was a wonderful hippie. And I had a great life. I lived, well. I earned all my own money. I wasn't living from his money. I was living my life. But his expectation was that in shirking what he thought my responsibility to life should be, was so bad that we didn't talk for a decade.
And that can happen days, weeks, months for our relationships with young adult children in our lives, for sure.
Yeah.
For a host of reasons. Reasons. Okay. So I like this. The big picture here before we move on to another one is when you feel triggered, pause and go inward and ask yourself something like, why does that bother me so bad? Like, what about me makes that subject so touchy?
Yeah. And the capacity to go there without judgment now means that you could bring it back into the interaction with the other, and it's far less likely to become an argument.
Oh my gosh. If I would say to my husband, because he knows that hurt me every time. Not that being an office manager isn't a radiatingly great intellectual. Oh my God, what office managers do in dental offices is such an intellectual pursuit. But if I would say to my husband, Chuck, I just feel like I'm not being seen a second ago, and I think that does relate back to, how it was when people would shake my hand and say, "Are you the office manager?" It almost makes me feel that same way, like I'm not being heard. He would feel it would stop him right in his tracks. He would get it instantly.
Yeah. But I want you to take it one more level of intimacy that's totally uncomfortable.
Okay.
Like to almost where you'd feel the rawness in the, not the explanatory, but let him fully see you and meet you in the pain that's behind it.
Okay.
That's connection in my definition.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go there then. Number 3 on my list was turning fights into connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And that would be that moment. Yeah.
That is the moment.
That's the moment. It would be, I might even cry doing it because I have to feel how it feels inside me.
Yeah.
But like, Chuck, I know we've talked about it a lot. And I know you don't do it intentionally, but when you interrupt me in the middle of trying to say something and you think you already understand it, and especially when you don't, it really hurts. And it hurts on a level of like, I now have to like feel all the pain of my entire life of not being seen, not being heard, not being appreciated. And I don't want to have to raise my voice to you. And you're forcing me to raise my voice to be heard, and I don't want that.
He is an absolute lovely person, and if I said that, I'm telling you, he is. He comes from lovely people.
I'm sure. I know you wouldn't be with him if you were.
I'm from kind of feisty people. We shouted a lot in our house, but not in his house. And that would be the end of that. Okay, so lovely. I hope that people listening to this episode can take whatever common thing that they that they fight about and find some threads to pull apart now and look at things differently.
But just a quick question on that, though, if it's okay how would that be for him if you were to say that?
That's what I mean. He's such a lovely person. He would be like stopped in his tracks. He would totally get it. He would totally get it because he stood there embarrassed for the other person when I'm doing that handshaking thing.
Yeah, of course. And now imagine if you did that 2 or 3 times, Linda.
Yeah.
And then how do you think it would affect him going forward in terms of himself managing? Because now he's not doing it because he's trying to stop a fight. He's doing it because he loves you so much.
That's right.
And he realized it's something that he's blind to in himself. He knows that already. But now he's dedicated it for like the most beautiful of reasons. Not out of fear, but out of love.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Then here's number 5. The art of the loving argument.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, this is where we're going in the loving argument.
Okay.
And the loving argument is that moment when there's safety, because there has to be safety. Let's also agree that I do it myself, but my wife says, why the hell do you leave yourself vulnerable to somebody that wants to hurt you, right? Like, why would you do that? And I'd always say to her, because if I'm not that vulnerable, I don't give them a chance to see me. And if they don't really see me, then every reaction they have is obviously something that I could have at least give them a chance to react differently. But if they're only reacting to what may be perceived as a trigger in me, then all of a sudden their behavior makes all the sense in the world because they're just behaving from a protection of me. So I go to great lengths, and it can be uncomfortable to actually go and really show the vulnerability in things. So others have the chance to meet me in that. And they don't always, and I don't want to say, it's a choice I've made in my own life. And yeah, I'd say it functions more than half of the time. But that third hurts. And I don't want to take that third away. I don't want to say, because of that third, I'm going to protect myself from all these other moments when it might actually, we might actually connect on a deeper level.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. This is great. I hope people can see their own lives in this conversation. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk more with Andy Chaleff. You know how the constant negative noise in our digital lives feels like it's reaching a boiling point? Now, many of us have tuned out the news and social media almost entirely. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. There are newsworthy stories about amazing progress, innovation, leaps in human potential, and wonders in the natural world, and they're just not reaching the top of our feeds. We can have access to this, but none of us has the time or maybe even the emotional stamina to search through all the doom and gloom news to find what's right with the world. Okay, enter the Goodness Exchange. There, we are giving instant access to positive news for curious people. Did you hear about the recent Harvard study that found that exposure to just 4 minutes of good news can make you 32% less anxious and 18% more optimistic? Well, I don't know about you, but I need those kind of numbers in my life. So if you want to live with more joy and way less fear, it's really simple. First, you join us at the Goodness Exchange. Everyone around the world has the opportunity to access this kind of content. And we've promised no politics for about a decade, so you're safe from all that distraction as well. Second, you allow this new, more positive, balanced worldview to put a spring in your step again. It can change the way you react to your kids, your coworkers, everybody you come in contact with. And the stories we write about can make you the idea person in your circles. These challenging times call for us to wake up and take control of our perspective. The people who use the Goodness Exchange have the ability to react to the harshness of the world much different because they know way more about what's right with the world. And that's a resource. So, subscribe to the Goodness Exchange, our YouTube channel and the podcast, and use this content to live a more expansive worldview. It is still an amazing world out there, and you can be a part of it. Welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness. Okay, we're back with Andy Chaleff, author, relationship coach, game creator, and we're talking about this game. Wait, I don't think we've explained the game. Please explain the game, Andy.
I came out with the Connection Playbook. It was a great book, and people really enjoyed it. And they said, Andy, what can we do practically? And I thought, well, let's make a game of this. And so I spent a good, I think, 2 years, maybe 3 even, making games that almost turned into divorce. So I basically went to, all my friends would joke, I think you should call this game Divorce, because at the end, everyone seems to fight and it doesn't seem to resolve. When you create an environment where people bring up emotions and then there isn't necessarily the best facilitation around it, it isn't necessarily helpful. It's just stirring the pot. So what I did was I looked and said, what are the most common things that basically more relationships than not deal with? And then I said, what are the tools that could support a facilitation in the moments when it's not comfortable? So people are asked to role play the same arguments that they normally have. But the fact that it's role played is also creating some liberty to say you're away from the argument so you can now experience it a little bit differently. And then there'll be facilitation cards, and then you use those when things get a bit heated and you think, we're not doing this well, let's interrupt it with a pattern shift and see what comes of it. So that's how this game Cool It was born. And it was just a fun opportunity to rethink how you help people prepare for the hardest moments, which are the arguments they're having. And that's not an easy thing. That's just not an easy thing.
People are always asking me, if I could give them a piece of advice if, that our relationship lasted so long. And I think it does come back to something that you're saying. I mean, you have to just sort of remember that no feeling lasts forever.
Mm-hmm.
And that what I noticed in my dental practice was a lot of the folks who gave up on their relationships, not relationships that had outward abuse. I mean, those needed
clearly
to end. But if folks just couldn't get through this constant tension and the conflict and personality styles and all that, and they gave up, they very often didn't trade away any of the things that were conflicts. That the level of conflict, they just got different things to conflict over with a new person.
Exactly.
And that goes back to what you were just saying. Like, if these conflicts are there and it's in us, it doesn't matter how many partners we switch out.
Does not matter. I've got clients that have had 5 divorces, and I laughingly say, do you think there's a pattern here? Like, let's think back on this. Do you think there's something that you do that's consistent in all 5 of these? Yeah.
Yeah. Or even just the fact that, we are stuck on these notions that need a deeper thought process about ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? Like it isn't the other person. It isn't. It is that we have unresolved things. So, thank you so much.
Yeah, and it's so easy to try to diagnose the other and kind of make it about them, and it's never not also about them. So there's this sort of space in the middle, which is, it's not like I'm saying I'm the one that's shouldering all of this, because that would be self-sacrifice. It's not saying it's only about this jerk that doesn't do or say or blah, blah, blah. It's about what's the dynamic and how am I interacting with that dynamic? And so when you're interrupted, my preference for you would be that, oh, there's an interruption right now. Apparently he has something important to say, right? Or he thinks that this is more important. Like, that would be the comfortable way for you to navigate it. And then you'd say, listen, Chuck, I know there's something you really feel like you have in mind. how much space do you have for me to finish this idea? Because it's hard for me to feel that you're going to listen to me if you've already decided what you want to do anyways.
Yeah, it has gotten better over the years. What we kind of decided, how we navigated it so that it doesn't happen all the time. But how we decided to navigate it was we decided to always pause. We got that part good.
Okay.
We didn't do it this morning, but we usually we say, which one of us actually feels more strongly about it?
No, interesting. I like that.
And we like, I want to go to Tanzania and he wants to go to France. And we say, which one of us feels more strongly about it, about where we want to go. And then we try and negotiate from there.
That's
and
nice.
That actually works. Okay, but that gets me to our next topic.
Yeah.
Fighting fair.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Fighting fair, in a way, when the amygdala is charged, that's when we say the things that can be most hurtful. And there's a kind of fight or flight, right? And normally there'll often be one person in the dynamic that's wants to draw blood.
Okay, and that is back to, just so people who maybe don't study neuroscience, the amygdala is the part of your brain that is on all the time, even when you're sleeping, and it's looking for situations where you need to either fight or flee. And we go there very, very fast. And I always say about the negative news, if you're here, it's because your ancestors were really good at fight or flight. They were really good at bad news. Bad news, there's a saber-toothed tiger coming in the cave. And it is so much. It is so common in the depths of these issues that we're all carrying around, to just use that amygdala and get to that fight that dukes up, point it, and draw blood. And depending on how deep, want to draw blood.
And then that moment, that single moment, you might have done 100 things well, but that single moment then becomes the basis for the distrust of you, or towards the other. So it's the weirdest thing. It's like, if people know you're capable of that, that's enough. If they just know you're capable of that, then their safety is gone in a very quick way, unless they're resourced and they're able to create that for themselves.
I want to
and
pause
that's rare,
here.
and that's very rare.
I want to pause here on something you said. If people know you're capable of that, that is huge. Because if you have said something that's super hateful, and certainly I have, and Chuck doesn't. He never draws blood.
Yeah.
He never does.
Yeah.
He comes from really, really nice people. I keep saying that. Not that I don't come from nice people. My dad 1,000 people came to my dad's funeral, but he was way more explosive and way, way, bigger. My mom was too. Okay. I just want us to just sit there with this moment of people knowing what we're capable of, because they've seen it once in a while. That is tough. I have a really good friend who's passed now, but he once totally flew off the handle to his kids, and he was otherwise the nicest human being on the planet. And once I saw him do that, my view of him changed forever.
Yeah.
Okay. So there we've described the problem a lot. What's fighting fair mean?
I mean, so in this case, like, now we go back to safety.
Okay.
So we now go back to the connection of two people. So if one person acts out, right, and does the emotional outburst, the other person will often have to find, how can they find that person back? How can they feel safe around that person, especially if that's a trigger for them? And that's where, again, we get back to these emotional conversations where it would be, when you said that, I know it was a bad moment for you, but this is what it meant for me. And then you want to do it in as much a way so the other person doesn't have to defend themselves, because you don't want them to. I don't even want them to feel shame for what they said, like that shame cycle. We want to bring it to enough consciousness so that the person can meet me in what was created, and then we can align and find ourselves back again. And if couples can't do that, it's really hard to stay together. Because now we're in a constant kind of one arm up mode of like, I don't want to trigger that. I don't want to create a moment when that trigger could happen. So now the person's living in fear of that trigger in the other, and they're self-regulating so that that doesn't occur.
Oh, it's so true. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do see this in our own relationship and some relationships that I'm close to. Does this mean then another topic that we're going to talk to is going from tension to tenderness?
Yeah.
Is this the natural
Well, this
transition?
would be this would be the, it's funny as we speak around these things, they can sound way too easy. In a way, it's like, what do you have to do? So the only way I have myself been able to get to a place where I could turn things quicker to be from tension to connection is by fully going back to where we started this conversation, is that I don't let the first reaction define me. And I don't, and it doesn't mean I suppress it. I don't want that to be confused. I actually see it, like I said, as a meditation. I actually see that everything that's created as a reaction is just another thing for me to say, wow, that's a fascinating thing that just happened in my brain. Or, wow, I feel a tightness in my chest. Oh, wow, I feel like I feel my face getting red. Like it's the observation of the reaction. And then the choice at that moment is to rationalize it and say, oh, I know this. This is because I had this as a child, and I've talked about this so many times. So now I'm disconnected from the emotion. Or I go in and say, wow, this is deeply painful. I can feel the emotions come up and how hard it is for me to sit with those emotions. And now, what the chance that I'm going to say, well, I'm going to allow those emotions to be revealed when I'm not feeling safe. But that's the way out of this dynamic. And it only takes one person to do it. The other will most likely meet them, not always. But if you don't get met 5 times in doing that, I mean, what's the likelihood that you're going to stay in that relationship? Because what you're saying is, I'm giving us the greatest chance of being together. I'm taking full responsibility for my emotion. And then if you do that, right, without blame, you just fully take responsibility, and then you're not being met in that over and over again, at some point, you're going to be meeting somebody else who does meet you there. You're going to say, I need that intimacy. Some people do it. Some people have already agreed they're not going to get the intimacy from their partner, so they'll create a network around themselves to get that. And that's also fine, if it's openly spoken. But if you blame the other person, and then that becomes that's the vicious cycle, not the virtuous one.
Okay. Now, so many times, this inability to go from tension to tenderness, or, take contempt and turn it into curiosity, it's totally blocked by logic.
Yes.
Like,
oh, yeah.
Oh, like,
because we think we can think our way through it. That's always the idea.
Right? Like, I will use logic. And then I'll say, and then this follows that, and then we're going to, okay. But you're a man about love. Yeah. Your concepts, we haven't hardly mentioned the word love here.
Yeah.
So far. We're 51 minutes in. It really comes back to figuring out if you can put love above logic sometimes, doesn't it? Isn't it? It's just clear. It's just that.
It actually is that simple. If you really want to take it to say, what is it? I had the chapter in the book. You haven't read the new book,
No.
Dying to Live. Oh,
okay.
After you read that one, you're going to have a chuckle after this conversation.
Okay.
Was that I had this beautiful moment when I was writing, and I was like, oh, wow, I make 1,000 decisions a day that are guided by fear or love. And I was like, oh, do I play with the child who's there, with the parents there, of course, or am I fearful that I might be seen as a pedophile? Do I say hello to the woman in the elevator who looks like she's got a face that, is full of torture and pain, and say it's wonderful to see you, and think, oh, I'm encroaching on somebody? Or do I take the risk and let her see that there's somebody that sees her and cares? When I was writing, I was like, wow, I make that decision over and over again to choose the love and not the fear.
This is huge. It doesn't, that's something I've been recommending to people, because that's what the innovators, the people that I interview and have for 13 years talked to, that are innovators and are fearlessly tackling the problems of our world. I always say that they make their decisions I'm based on love, not fear. Love for the future, love for the world, love for animals, love for space, love for, and they just will not listen to the fearful warnings of their family that doesn't want them to go try and fix the mining waste problem in Ohio, or right? That's it. Every day, it's a choice between fear and love, all day long.
Yeah, all day long. Yeah, and I always laugh because my wife lives more in fear than I do. So she'll always say, "Why did you do that?" Or especially when I talked about interacting with kids, or something. Her just you're just too friendly to them. You're just too friendly to them. Like, oh, I don't, and she has a point, right? She has a point, and I can't take it away from her. But it's more like, oh wow, I know my intention, I know my thought. So but the humor is that if you're around enough people who say things to you similarly over and over again, what they do is they push you into conformity, which is also the fear that they live in.
Absolutely.
So you're actively choosing not to accept that as the paradigm that you go into life living through that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think that's a really, really powerful distinction when we have squabbles with our teenager, with our neighbor.
Yeah.
Can't get away from those relationships. Our neighbor is our neighbor, right?
Yeah.
And that's it. Our teenager will be our teenager forever. Our mother-in-law will be our mother-in-law forever.
Yeah.
Right? Like till death.
Speaking of which, I had my neighbor screaming at me in the backyard because they've been feeding the pigeons. Now we've got like 50 pigeons in the backyard shitting everywhere, making a mess. It's horrible. We wrote really lovely letters. We say, I know, just doing our best to say, and she's not legally allowed to do this for that exact reason, right? Especially if there's any problem. So, and then I told her, well, listen, here's the issue now, is that I've got all this damage that's occurring because of the pigeons. So I have to bring cleaners in. But now, as far as I'm concerned, like those costs will be borne by you. Because I don't, this is the damage you're creating, and then
wait. Well, who's feeding the pigeons?
The neighbor is feeding the pigeons.
Oh, I thought you said you were.
No. The neighbor's feeding the pigeons in the backyard.
Okay.
And it's just created a havoc in the backyard.
But why was she yelling at you?
She was yelling at me because I asked her to stop doing that, and then she started screaming racial epithets at me, go home, you foreigner, and blah, she was going off. I mean, she just went to town, and there's a funny loop to the story. So I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, listen, I understand that this is something that you want, but there's damage occurring, and it's not only occurring on our property. There's another neighbor, and we're having bird poop everywhere, and it's not legally allowed. And then I said to her, listen, I understand you're not going to change the behavior, but do realize now you force me to now document it, clean it, and then force you to pay for it in court. And I don't want to do that, but that's the path we're now going down. And it's such a shame because it shouldn't have to be that way. But I see that there's no other chance for this. And then she started. Then she didn't do it, but then she started screaming at me, right? Still again and again, and then a day later, I went downstairs to the neighbor below, and we were chit chatting. And I said, it's so sad because now I have to get the lawyer involved, and this is just such a not something I want to do. But I don't really have much of a choice because the damage is getting pretty significant. And then he said, you know what? Her husband died last month. And now these birds are the one thing that she has connection to.
Equanimity.
And I'm now telling her she can't do that one thing.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that is essentially a story that, contempt to curiosity. I mean, we've got to pause. I once had an incident like that where I was a total jerk to somebody on a subway, and their kids were running wild. They were running wild up and down this subway car. I was dressed up. I got my toes and my shoes smashed and this and that. And I was really getting crazy and not responding well. And I was just about to give this guy a piece of my mind because he was completely ignoring his kids. And then the woman sitting with him, who was older, must have been somebody that was, she whispered, she leaned over to me and she goes, "They're just returning from the hospital. His wife just passed away." And I felt like the biggest jerk on the planet. Like just hours ago, she says. Hours ago.
Yeah.
And here he was facing a life of raising 3 really quite little kids all by himself. I mean, we've got to leave room for the pain that's in others.
Yeah.
That we don't know about, we may never know about. Where does that, I think that does come back to asking ourselves,
Well, slow down. We can only allow ourselves to be with the pain of others to the degree that we've allowed ourselves to be with that pain within ourselves.
Okay.
So when you said that, if we've made space for that pain in ourselves, we can be present for that pain in another. And if we can't, it'll trigger us, and then it'll come out in these contorted ways.
Oh, wow. That is so huge. That's kind of a breaking a cycle moment too, right? Like that realization when that lady leaned over next to me, man, that broke a cycle of judgment in me that had probably been there for all my life, I'm sure. I always thought, I once had a lady say to me, Linda, you don't have to be the police officer to the world.
Wow. She says, I got it from my dad.
Yeah. I thought I got it then. Okay, so all this is fun and discovery and everything. How do we make play? Can we break this down enough?
The play happens when you don't take your effing thoughts that seriously.
Okay.
That's when the play happens.
That's the bottom line.
Because it's like an attachment. Like I see my brain as a stupid generator of thought. Just thought. If I attach to a thought, I'm like, whoa, what made that became something that I actually thought I wanted to spend time with. Otherwise, it's just random things. And now it's like, oh, bang, I pulled one. What made that I pulled that one? What made that I keep thinking about this subject over and over again? And if I start getting drawn into it without seeing what I'm getting drawn into, then, of course, I'm a byproduct of my environment. I'm no longer taking the agency over my thinking processes because everything around me will define who I am and how I show up. And I'd say to some degree that's always going to be the case, but through life we can become clearer and clearer on what's going on inside of me. How is that impacting my reactions or my responses? And what if I didn't take my thoughts all that seriously?
Yeah. We do
And
take ourselves seriously, don't we?
Oh my. And my joking and my playing.
Yes.
Some people are like, Andy, you can take a subject that feels so heavy and reduce it down to almost the most humorous absurdity. And it's like, as a child, it was a coping mechanism, right? It was a child that was like, oh, it feels heavy in the room. How can I tell a joke to lighten this sense? Because I was very, sensitive as a child. And now it turns into, oh, it actually is quite absurd. It is quite absurd that I've created this fictitious or fabricated idea of the way things should be. That's absurd. The fact that you shouldn't be able to interrupt me at any moment. I love being interrupted, Linda. I love it. I absolutely love it. Because I'm like, wow, if you think you got something more important to say, what is it? Like, that's how I react to interruption. My priming is not, I'm not being taken seriously. Now, I don't want to imply that you should. Obviously, I have other triggers. So those are the triggers I had to make peace with in myself. But I've framed an interruption as like the coolest thing in the world. Like, I don't want to talk. What am I going to fill the air up with my voice? No. What do you got? What do you think? And then if someone says something, I'll laugh and I'll say, that's a terrible idea. What are you talking about? But without any of it's funny. It's a terrible idea, but I'm almost not saying it with judgment. It sounds like an ultimate contradiction.
Yeah.
Because I'm holding it so lightly that I'm not wedded, again, going back to the photographer, to the outcome. Right. I'm in a process, right? It was uncomfortable for me to interrupt you in our interview.
When we were playing.
When we were playing. That wasn't comfortable. When we were playing, right? Yeah, exactly. We were playing. But it wasn't comfortable for me to do that. It wasn't. But I had to say it's absurd for us to talk about something that we could be experiencing at this very moment. Right. So let's take that risk.
Can I add one more layer to it?
Yeah.
I wasn't that insulted when you did it.
Yeah.
It's when Chuck does it. I mean, we've been together since we were 14. 14. Yeah. We both had terrible childhood tragedies that we. Yeah. Chuck was talking to somebody regularly for a while, and once he heard both of our stories, he said, "It's a miracle you guys are married," because we both have childhood tragedies that we kind of raised each other through. And I like I like the fact that we've arrived at this point where we're going to have this kind of conflict with one person, and maybe with another, we're not going to have those triggers. And I mean, I think it does all reflect back on just being able to pause and hold up a mirror for a minute. Just, you use the word meditation. It's a meditation. I don't know if, I think is that the same as a practice? You got to practice.
You could call it whatever you want. I would like to say that when I experience the world through the lens of wonder, everything feels a little different. So if it's in wonder, it's like, is it a practice? Is it a tool? I don't know what one would say. But I would say if it's not in wonder, I know it. Because I already think, like if someone asks me a question and I already know the answer that they have in mind, then it's not from me asked in that wondrous way. Because they're asking, pointing at an outcome that they already think they're going to get if they ask me that question. So that it's the wondrous question that we don't ask just another person, but we ask ourselves. And that's fascinating.
That's the bottom line, I think, Andy.
Yeah.
That's just like taking layer by layer. We just, layer by layer by layer. Yeah. If you experience the world in a state of wonder, you're going to live a long life, not by years, but by expansion, by possibilities.
Yeah.
Right? Your potential,
exactly.
The potentials of the moments around you could change if you can live in a state of wonder.
Yeah. And if you go back to the moments where Chuck interrupts you, and you've made peace with all the triggers that come up. I don't feel seen. I don't feel heard. I don't respect. So all of them have been metabolized in your system. And so now you're just listening to him interrupt you, half laughing, actually happy he's done it, because you're like, oh, now I get to play with this mother.
Yes, 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 yes,
My
yes.
language. I'm sorry. I just
No,
enjoy but
no.
now, but not in the mean way, but in the fun way,
Yeah.
in the loving way, because now we're not attached to anything. Now we're just being with him and we're enjoying it. Chucky boy, what's going on with you right now? Why'd you interrupt me? You know better. Whatever it is, you will come up with 40 different ways, but it will never be from the triggered state anymore. It'll be from the wonder of how fun is this? When Ronnie does it with me, I enjoy it. I have fun.
Okay.
I
I
just laugh.
really think some of the real rocks that we've stumbled upon here today is this not being married to an outcome.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's in each one of my books. Each one of my
I
books has a chapter on it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I gotta say about the book, the Connection Playbook, I would recommend it to folks if they have a long drive. We have a 20-hour drive back to our home in Illinois where we grew up from Vermont. We live near Montreal. And we listened to your book and read it one of those drives. It was crazy. I don't even think we got 25% of the way in because we spent hours and the drive went by in a flash. Now, the pump was primed because we had listened to your interview, your first interview with me, and I'm for sure people go to the Goodness Exchange. There's going to be a lengthy article about this episode, but it will refer you to the first one. I think it's a state of mind. Aren't you asking us to sort of do human 2.0? Like,
yes, I'm asking you to. My second book, The Wounded Healer, was that practice. I am the thing that I'm most fearful of, I'm most angry about, I'm most this, and it's effing great. I am that, and it's effing great. I'm not being seen by my partner, and it's effing great. My dad never loved me, and it's effing great. My mom was killed by a drunk driver, and it's effing great. And we don't say it as a mantra. We don't say it to convince ourselves. We say it because in this quiet little place in our heads, when we've allowed that to be made peace with, it no longer defines us. And what we try to do is we try to manage our thoughts. And I would prefer to erase them and make them irrelevant. Just make them irrelevant because now I'm just present with you again.
This is huge. This being totally present in this moment, not in 10 moments ago, not in 10 years ago, not in 40 years ago. This being present in this moment is really, it was gorgeous Vermont morning this morning. Like, I'm so mad at myself for going there because we wasted some good, precious Vermont, great summer day moments.
Yeah.
But that is the bottom line too, is how much we can stay totally present to all that is happening, not just this tiny, tiny, minuscule little interaction that we're having. Which is
but I'd say going back. Sorry to interrupt you, but like going back into it, like actually that's the moment I want to be present in. That's the gift that Chuck gave you.
Right.
So that's actually. Instead of like, I want out of this, no, I want into this. I want like to make this the defining moment. This the moment when I'm like, wow, this is I'm going to revolutionize my life by doing something I've never done before. Just like you grabbed the hand, twisted it over and said, what makes you think that I wouldn't also be in that role? Like the same thing would be doing it, but with the twisting the hand open this time and saying, okay, I'm going to do the same thing, but in the opposite direction.
Lovely. Absolutely lovely.
I'm going to hold more discomfort in myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what haven't we talked about that you really like, I'm sure that, that like me, you're pretty careful about your incoming. You don't just randomly watch the news or spend hours scrolling on social media or whatever. But is there ever a time when you notice what's going on in the world and is there something you really wish people knew?
I see the world through the lens of the absurdity and the thoughts, right? And so when I see like a media outlet, then what I see is a catered narrative to a prior bias that I have. And so I don't listen to the news. I observe my bias through how I listen to the news. Because if I'm not seeing the biases that I have and why that information is credible, reliable, and so on and so forth, and then I create a narrative, then all of a sudden I've lost two things. I've lost contact with myself, first of all, because now I'm no longer as sort of sensing how I'm processing the information. I'm making the information now what's relevant and core, which is inherently disconnecting, because how much curiosity can I have if I'm already clear that I know better than you? Zero. If I ask you a question from that state, it's trying to win a debate. How connecting is that? It's not. So the only way through it is, again, to say, where do I sense the bias in me as I'm experiencing or hearing or interacting with something?
That's huge. And I think just from a different angle, or maybe it's the same angle, just articulated differently, that's the way we got to be when our 14-year-old is saying something that sounds completely crazy to us. We have to, if we can simmer down.
And it's always, I've often found it challenging because we have two roles with the 14-year-old. It's not our love relationship. It's a responsibility.
Oh, okay. Yeah, absolutely.
And that responsibility has kind of, what are the principles I'm going to use when raising this child? Mm-hmm. And it's a paradox, right? You've got to be cruel to be kind. So in some ways, the rules don't apply to the child.
Okay.
Or they apply differently.
Okay, and the same would probably be true of thinking this through with an employee that's really, really good at what they do, but they mess with the mojo of your office dynamics.
Sure, exactly.
I all my life I had people that were absolutely stunning in their clinical skills, but some that came and went because their team dynamics were just broken, or they would break us. Right?
Exactly.
And so we can't, now I'm looking at what we've just talked about for an hour and some and thinking, okay, it doesn't apply to everything, but a few things that we have talked to do, because we can always look inward.
Yes.
We can always
for sure. Inward. Oh, without a doubt.
We can
not take our thoughts seriously.
Right.
And be aware that there are always beliefs guiding us that we're not aware of, and know that. Not assume it, but know it. There are beliefs that are guiding us without us actually knowing it, and we think we've got free will, and it's nonsense. We don't have free will. We have a pre-programmed idea of right and wrong that we don't even know is programmed. We take it as so much as truth. So we have to say, okay, if that's true, how willing am I to go a little bit insane? Just a little bit. And say, you know what, maybe, just maybe, the way that my brain has kind of created and manifested and made all of these connections and these relationships is limited so far that I can't even see that how it's limited. What if I accepted it was limited as a precursor and just accepted it, not with judgment, not even with letting go of my own agency or making myself less, or not making me uncertain. What I'm saying is making it full of wonder. And in that wonder, as you can imagine, there's just a constant reinvention of what I know and what I understand. And it never ceases because there's always something I'm missing.
Always. That's lovely. And that's a lovely way to pause this conversation until another day.
Yeah.
When we can pick up where we left off. And I can't thank you enough. This has been a delight.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Full of wonder, all of it.
A lot of wonder. All
right. Well, I'm going out of this thing and I'm making more decisions based on love and not fear.
I love it. Well,
all right.
I'll be doing the same.
Thank you, Andy Chaleff. Andy, where can people find your work? I always like to leave somebody leave people with what they should do next? How can
So,
people
so
continue a journey with you?
I'm very protective of my time. So I write books. I write on Substack. I leave my material for free. I created a chatbot that's Andy Chaleff. People can say, coach me as if you're Andy Chaleff, and then they can bring in their things, even in relationships. And it's very good. It's exceptionally good. It's scarily. The article on Esquire magazine comes out today, so the September 2025 issue is out, and the book Dying to Live comes out September 10th, and it's
2025.
2025,
Yeah.
and it's really for me it's gotten some of the best reviews of any of the books that have come out from big names. I've got Deepak Chopra on the cover, and Bob Thurman is in there, and Chip Conley is in there. So it's a lot of people who are well established. You're really Sugata Mitra and Satish Kumar. So really people that was almost scary to give the book to. It was like, ooh, this is a little bit, but they all were really taken by it. And it's a memoir to death, and I do feel like part of the journey that we have to make peace with, right? The thing that I was saying earlier, any thought that we have, we should find a way to make peace. Well, I found my way to make peace through that book, and I think anyone who reads it has a similar experience from what I've heard. So that's coming out as well. And andychaleff.com is where I post everything, so you can always go there and see.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Well, that is what we want to do, is give people what to do next. Well, it's been a delight. Thank you so much. I hope that the insights that Andy and I shared with you today put a spring in your step, give you some fresh perspectives, help you live with more joy and less fear. That's the goal. We can do it.
It is.
Have a great day.